So the first question I have for you is how and where did you find wrestling, and in what way would you say it's impacted your life?
I would say it's impacted now, at the age that I'm at now, every area. The sport that I found and grew to love has an influence on every aspect. I can find some way to relate it back to the sport of wrestling. And like broadly speaking, but I found wrestling. So I was born in Louisiana. I moved to Chattanooga when I was 8 years old. I started going to Red Bank Elementary, but I did not start wrestling until the sixth grade at Red Bank Middle. It was the old Red Bank Middle that's now torn down. So I didn't go to the new building that's right behind the high school. I had my coach was Coach Wolf. I had an older brother. I got an older brother who is 2 years older than me, but he was just a grade ahead. In
Hmm.
his sixth grade year, he chose to start wrestling for the first time. And at that point, I looked up, his name's Toby. I looked up to Toby a lot and I kind of followed a lot of what he did. So his seventh grade year, my sixth grade year, I chose to join the team. And that's kind of where it all started. I didn't learn a whole lot about how to actually wrestle, like how to actually wrestle, what it means to be a wrestler, how to do moves correctly, how to, you know, what are the basics? How do we learn these? How do we fine tune, these extremely important, performance concepts within this sport that can, attain to a lot of success. I didn't find that in middle school. I found that, when I got to high school. But that's how I got started.
Well, I think you mentioned kind of truly finding the ways about the sport in high school, and I think that happens for a fair amount of wrestlers, and it's just the intensity of it really ramps up uh,
Mm-hmm.
when you make that switch, and it can go the same for making the switch from high school to college.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you go in, everyone's a little bit older, a little bit stronger, been in the game a little bit longer. And you have to figure it out, and you have to figure it out for yourself. Like, oh, where do I need to put in more work to make those strides and those improvements to make my way in the starting lineup, or you know, pretty much have a successful career in that sport, because it's a tough sport to love, but once you learn how to love sport, it doesn't leave you, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. No, completely agree with you.
So kind of moving from there, kind of transitioned into high school. So while you were in high school, Red Bank won their first state dual championship in 2016.
Mm.
And what was that team like, and what was y'all's mindset going into the duels?
Yeah. I got to throw it all the way back to freshman year. So coming out of middle school, my brother wrestled all the way through middle school. He actually won the county championship his eighth grade year.
Mhm.
I did not. I never won a county championship. Coming into Red Bank High, ninth grader, Shane Turner was just hired. He was actually our assistant coach that year, and Ben Reichel was the head coach. And that's immediately when the culture of what Red Bank Wrestling had been from 2012 to all the way back to 2008, let's say 2007, maybe.
Mhm.
You've got 2009 state champ from Red Bank, Jonathan Taylor. I'm not sure if you've heard that name or whatnot, but that was the last state champ that Red Bank had up until um, 2013 when Gabriel McDuffie and Devin Kroll won their first state title our sophomore year.
Mhm.
So ninth grade year, Shane Turner comes in, the culture just changes. You've got a guy coming in who had, was a veteran in the sport, was one of the top technicians in the whole state, had an allure of, had a crazy resume of, coaching over 30 state champs, got a legendary run at Saudi Daisy. I remember being coached wrestling against Rabbit in middle school. All of that shifted. And when the season went on and we actually, so our team name was the Nasty Nine. That's what we were called. We had nine guys coming in from Red Bank Middle. We were all eighth graders, all good friends, and that was us. It was nine people on the team my freshman year, and the season ended, and we had no state qualifiers. That was back when the region the region was pretty big. We had started. I don't know if we'd started small school yet. I don't know if that classification split had happened yet. I want to say that it did, but part of me, because I remember wrestling a Saudi Daisy guy to get beat in the match in the blood round. I got beat in the blood round that freshman year. But we had a meeting after that year. Nobody made it to state. We had a meeting. And pretty much it was like, he asked us this question. He said, do you ever want to feel what you just felt again in high school? Which is, not qualifying for the state tournament. Obviously, the easy answer was no. We had started to kind of understand like what this could do for us, what we could be with this avenue, with this tool, the sport of wrestling. And so we bought in, all of us, all 9 of us bought in. You fast forward all the way, 4 years, wrestling year round from the end of our freshman year, traveling. We traveled as a team. We were, our club team was called Bad Boy Wrestling Club, and we had it at Red Bank, and it was with Shane Turner and Rabbit. Rabbit was the main head coach. We'd started a kids club program. That's actually when I met Kobe Smith. He was in the kids club program. I think he was in 5th grade, I believe. And he was tearing up everybody. He'd already been wrestling about 2 or 3 years. And so, yeah, you're wrestling year round. You're doing the things that it takes to build a team, to build a brotherhood. And then once you can establish that, and you've got the wrestling being developed, those are all the tools you need to, winning a state title. And so I've got a pretty interesting story. I'm going to open up about something that is a large regret in my life. It's probably one of the biggest. It still sits with me today, but it's why it shaped who I am as a coach. So I finished my sophomore season, state runner-up. I made it to the state final, so I go from not qualifying for the state. You wrestle 60 matches, from March until June, and wow, look at that! I found myself in the state finals the very next year. If any kid needs any sort of convincing and what an off season can do for you, what mat time, we talk about this thing as mat time. That's a very thrown around term, but there is nothing more important than mat time. Obviously, drilling a move 10,000 times, they say, can perfect it. Drilling's important, practice is important, but being on the mat, experiencing new situations and new scenarios is the most beneficial way you're going to learn as a wrestler. State finals, it was bad. I wrestled this guy named Gavin Hutchins from Pigeon Forge, and I got pinned at about 55 seconds. He had pinned everybody in the tournament with a double armbar, double chicken wings, just ran him over. Fist in, straight over. Pinned his way through the tournament, did the same thing with me in the finals. And that ate away at me, but we went right back to work. Right. And that summer, that spring into summer after sophomore year was the best offseason that I had. I won, beat this. The biggest thing, I think the biggest accomplishment was Southeast Regionals down in Atlanta. Freestyle and Greco took first in both of those. Beat a guy named TJ Hicks from Bradley Central. Beat him in freestyle and Greco for the title there. Wrestled a lot of kids. It was every state in the Southeast that you could think of, across the board. It was a very fun tournament. It was in Atlanta. It wasn't that far. And, that was the highest, success that I had reached at. We also wrestled at the Tennessee state tournament for freestyle and Greco. Beat him in Greco. I was always better at Greco. I really loved Greco. But I guess I had a leg defense, issue, and he could get to my legs a lot of the times. But beat him in Greco. I got beaten freestyle in state tournament, but did beat him twice in both styles at Southeast Regionals. Going into my junior year, at this point, I'm growing. Right. Just as a teenager, and weight's starting to go up, and I'm looking for a state title. Obviously, came short of it. And I made the decision to stay down at 13 my junior year. But I was walking around at the end of summer. I was walking around at about 123, 122 probably. And at that time, it's like, it's only 10 pounds. But when you're that small, it's a difficult cut. Not only is it a difficult cut, but it's okay. My metabolism is extremely high. How many calories? What's the lowest amount of calories I'm going to be able to eat and still function, for an entire season? And I didn't have it figured out. I did my weight cut wrong a lot of the times, but nevertheless, I stuck it out all the way to the region tournament my junior year. I was the number one ranked wrestler in the state for small school. And there's a kid that had been beating me every single year since my sixth grade year. His name was Hunter Owens from East Ridge. And I finally beat him 1-0 in the region finals. I was the number one kid in the state, and I snagged the number one seed for the state tournament 2 weeks later. And Gavin Hutchins was the number 2 seed. And I made a decision. So I had a small injury in practice the week after the region tournament. But it's not the reason that what I'm about to tell you is what I did. I broke mentally. I went home from the region tournament. I think I was about 13, 14 pounds overweight. The region tournament was actually at Signal Mountain. That's where it was. It was at Signal Mountain High. That I remember sitting in the weigh-in. I remember sitting in y'all's wrestling room. That's where we weighed in at. That was probably the biggest match of my life, just because it was a kid that had been beating me for about 7 years. Never found a way to beat him. And then I finally did. And I broke mentally. I had a pretty serious thumb injury, but it wasn't broken. But long story short, Mason, I quit the team.
Wow.
I quit the team as the number one guy in state. I was the number one seed for 113 pounds my junior year. For 2 reasons. And this is just me being like a vulnerable wrestler who is like, hey man, like the pressure can get to you, like you can own up to it. And this time I didn't own up to it. I was pretty nervous about wrestling Gavin Hutchins in the finals again. He actually didn't make it. He was actually DQ'd in that tournament for something. And I didn't go. And moving on to my senior year, I was done with wrestling for good. I was done with the sport. The sport was done with me. And Red Bank wrestled their I hadn't, teammates kind of, for the most part, disowned me. I didn't talk to Shane for about 8 months, probably. And they wrestled their first home duel against Ottawa, and they lost by a point. I found myself in my room that night. I think my roommate's about to walk in. Give me 1 sec. All right, man, I'm going. So, hey, I'm on a podcast. You're good. I just wanted to let you know. All right. I think where was I at? Senior year. They lost by a point. I found myself in my room that night in tears. Went back to school the next day, asked Shane for a spot back on the team. And so he made me go to practice, asked the guys if it was okay. We put it behind us, and the rest is history. That year, I wrestled 126 pounds. I think at the beginning of that year, after the summer, I think I was weighing right under 140. I think I weighed, he took me down to the locker room, and I weighed right about 138. He said, I need you at 26. And I said, I'll do whatever it takes. And that year I actually learned how to cut weight correctly. It was the best year of high school I ever had. And it was one gruesome journey to a state dual championship. But that's why I think that's why the regret of my junior year doesn't eat away as much. But you knowing that you're a current high school wrestler, that the ultimate goal in high school, if you wrestle in high school, is to become a state champion.
Oh yeah.
There's no other feeling. There's no other feeling of happiness than becoming a state champion. I watched a lot of my teammates do it, but I never got to feel it. The freestyle, the Greco state championship, it doesn't count. If you don't win a state championship in the Cow Palace, in the Ag Expo Park, it's, you missed out on something remarkable, and I did, but that was the icing on the cake, and when we did it, it was kind of surreal. But we knew that we did what we needed to do in order to get there. That day I asked Shane for a spot back on the team. He looked at me and said, hey, Trent, you're more than welcome to come back on the team. You've got to ask the guys first off, obviously. But we're going to win a state dual title without you, or we're going to win a state dual title with you. But we're going to win a state dual title. He just knew. He believed in our team. He believed in what we built. That year, we had about 35 guys on the team. So we started with 9, and we ended with 35, my senior year. And yeah, try to relive that pretty frequently. But that's kind of how that's kind of the journey. I know that was kind of long. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all
Um,
good.
but yeah, that's kind of how it happens.
Well, I think it's very interesting that you were able to have that resurgence and, like you said, kind of icing on the cake, cap it off with that, state dual championship. That, that adds y'all to a list of a very select group of teams, that have been able to say they won one, and also, it being in the Cow Palace too, and it's etched in history. So I think the sport, one great thing about it is it exposes the athletes and the wrestlers to so much adversity at such a young age, and it's almost adversity at every weekend or every day, and that helps build so much character when going through that adversity, because you look back on it 10 years from now and you say those are some of the best moments because I had to find myself and persevere through to prove myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that individual tournament my senior year, I think a lot of us were checked out.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us felt like the job was done. But for one guy, I did, and that was Devin Crawl, who has a pretty remarkable story. He wrestled for 5 years in college, so he won his second state title that year, his senior year, at 182 pounds. And I think that year I took 6th. Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to walk out there without being on the podium, but
Yeah.
did not have a good tournament. I think I lost to a few dudes that I had beat earlier that year. But yeah, so Devin went on to wrestle at Northeastern Oklahoma for 3 years, and then he transferred to University of Central Oklahoma for his last 2 years of college. And he's now still in Oklahoma, and he's a teacher and a coach. He's a head coach of a middle school up there. I think it's Norman Middle School. And you know, those Oklahoma folks, they love wrestling. OKC probably wrestling capital of the country. So,
Oh yeah, they're fanatics about it up there. So kind of after finishing out your high school wrestling career, what made you want to circle back around and start coaching?
yeah, so it kind of all started my freshman year of college at UTC, which I'm still at UTC, and I'm graduating in 2 weeks. So
Mhm.
pretty happy about that. It's finally happening. It's been a long journey, but my first semester was fall 2016, and Shane had left Red Bank and he had started at Boyd Buchanan.
Okay.
Boyd Buchanan had a pretty decent wrestler. If you know Coach Williams, who has been, he's a Buccaneer, family member. Um, he's got some ALS now, but his son Zane is an amazing guy, and I had the opportunity to meet him and coach him and wrestle with him his senior year. So Zane Williams, they were, he was really the only guy on the team that had a promising chance at a state title, and so I was in that wrestling room every single day with one job pretty much, and it was just to wrestle with him live, and to drill with him if I needed to, but really it was to push him to it was to peak him physically, and it was to rub out those fine tune those details, those small
Right.
things that can leave you from either winning a state title or not. And he got the job done. He got the job done. So that's kind of where it started. Was going in there, just helping out, just wrestling. You know, Still wanted to be a part of it. I chose not to wrestle in college. So that's kind of actually where it starts. I was very, very close to going to West Point.
Oh, really?
I was talking with them pretty frequently. Yeah. I was a big ROTC kid in high school. And I know, there's a big stigma against, ROTC kids in high school. But at Red Bank, when I was there, ROTC was actually like very looked up to, and it was considered cool, I guess. All of my friends were in it. We had a great, senior Army instructor that was there. And so, but I couldn't do it. At the beginning of our conversation, you talked about how there's a switch from middle school wrestling to high school wrestling to college wrestling.
Right.
I wasn't ready for that switch to college wrestling. I wasn't ready for 4 years of psychological warfare. I feel like I had gone through so much, um, and I just thought, I think there's something else. There's another way.
Right.
So that's kind of where it started. Boy Buchanan. Soon after that, Rabbit was over at Notre Dame, coaching some freestyle and Greco in the off season. So I was in the room there pretty frequently, just helping a few kids out, wrestling with them, just giving some different feels. And then you fast forward, I dropped out of college. I did 3 years exercise science. Wasn't for me. Didn't want to be a physical trainer. And I actually did some mission work overseas in Hawaii for a little bit. And at that point, COVID happened. It was 2020. I had come home, and my knee was pretty bad. I got diagnosed with a pretty nasty disease in my knee right when I graduated. But I thought I was going to grow out of it, and I didn't. So my knee bone was like deteriorating, and it was like pretty much no longer going to work. The pain was excruciating. I couldn't go on a run, like I couldn't jog at all. Kind of hurt to walk. So had cadaver transplant surgery in my knee. Got a brand new knee in fall 2020. It was a 6 month recovery. At about 4.5 months in is when I stumbled upon a Facebook post by Chase Payne that said he was the head coach of Red Bank High School.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where it all starts. Knee still wrapped up. Started going to practice. Hit him up. I was like, hey, I'd love to help. So I became volunteer assistant. The day I started working out with the guys, my knee was kind of starting to get better. I had it pretty wrapped up though. Was in there with Kobe. That's the first time I'd seen Kobe in a long time, years really. And actually coached a match against the first match I ever coached, like as I was an interim head coach at the time, but Chase had gotten COVID the same week that I chose to start coming help. And he asked me, he said, I need you to coach these two matches this week. The first match I ever coached was against Whitwell, against Coach Houston Clements.
Wow, and that's something.
Yeah, your guy, man. And I think I don't know if he had a full team or not. Actually have no idea how the match went, but that's where it all started. That was pretty. It didn't last too long. I wasn't super involved. I was just a volunteer assistant. I was coming in when I could, and then summer goes on, and Chase hits me up in the summer, and like I was telling you earlier, took the middle school job. Took a job at Red Bank Middle as the head coach. Just kind of weaving my way back into Red Bank, and.
Right.
At the end of that year, Chase ended up getting a new teaching job at a school downtown, and he passed down the opportunity to take over the high school program this year. And I mean, how could you pass up on that?
Right.
Oh, I was been coaching for 3-4 years at this point. I figured I always wanted to coach high school wrestling. I felt like that's where my ability was. I feel like I could develop kids at the high school level. Felt confident in that, and so I took a leap of faith, and I took on the challenge. And well, there was one goal with Kobe winning the state tournament at the end of the year, and he got it done. And so it was a ride, dude. It was extremely hard. It was extremely hard, and a lot of learning and a lot of just self-reflection on, do I really want to do this thing? And I knew how to do the stuff in the practice room.
Right.
It's everything else that's involved with being a head coach. It's the paperwork, it's the scheduling, it's the money, it's a lot. It's a lot. But I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't take it back for anything. And yeah, I think I'm kind of I'm starting rambling, but trying to figure out your question here, your original question.
Yeah, I mean,
Hope I answered it. Yeah, I hope I answered it.
yeah, it's all good. It seems like it was kind of a back in the saddle type of moment once you got back involved with that program. A little bit of a return to home, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
And credit to y'all. You're putting in the work and building a really good atmosphere for for y'all and for that team, and that's always good to see, especially in this sport where a good atmosphere, in my opinion, is extremely important. So like I said, credit to y'all in that regard.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Could not have done it alone. I had a lot of help from so when I was at the middle school, my assistant coach was this guy named Trevor Scott. He wrestled at CCS back in the day. I think he graduated in 2018, but he wasn't able to help us at the high school this year. But he's my guy, and he came in a few times at the beginning of the year, but his schedule got too crazy. But without Coach Payne, without Coach Satterfield, man, I cannot say enough about Coach Brian Satterfield. Longtime coach at Red Bank, actually. So they won a state championship in 1995, and Coach Satterfield was on that team.
Wow.
And and I mean, yeah, that's my dude. He was in there just because he wanted to be. That's the only reason. Without him, I don't really know. It was tough for Chase to get to practice with his new job at a new school that ended pretty late, but he was there every second that he could be. Yeah, when I try to picture going through the season alone as a single head coach with no assistants at all, it sounds terrifying. It sounds like a nightmare. So I owe a lot to what we amounted to this year as a team to those two guys, especially Brian. Just he's a football coach at Red Bank too. He builds relationships with kids better than anyone I've ever seen, and he's one hell of a coach. Yeah.
Well, it takes a village, and that's one thing for sure. But yeah, a great group of coaches over there, and the dedication is one of a kind. And all in all, just thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you on, and getting a chance to interview you. And best of luck to all y'all, and Red Bank Wrestling included. And wish y'all luck in a good next season, and to everyone else.
Thanks, man. Mason, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk and have a conversation about these things.
Oh, no problem. It's always a pleasure to be able to do this and host these podcasts and get to have these conversations.
Yeah. Well, dude, keep it up. Uh, you know, if you need to know, people are watching, people love this stuff, especially, this wrestling community. Keep what you're doing, man. I think it's awesome. Don't stop what you're doing. Keep it up.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
good
that.
luck and good luck this off season and good luck next season, man. I'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. See you, Mason.
See you.